Hey, welcome! Today we want to have a look at the new hair system and the new hair sculpt mode and the new implementation for geometry nodes for the new hair system, or now called also curves. We can have a look at it at the newest Blender 3.2 alpha, and you can download the newest build via the Blender launcher, or you can go on blender.org, then click on downloads, then scroll all the way down, then click on this little rocket here, and here you can see the Blender 3.2 alpha. You can download this for your system, macOS or Linux, and then we are here. In this video we will be making something like this. Here we have full control, so we can adjust the hair, and this hair is edited via geometry nodes, so we can even change the nodes, and we can edit it here. We can delete some, but I don't want to. We can also create something like this. Little curly hair here. It's now looking like Frankenstein. Your creativity is completely free here. You can even add new hair. So if we want to have a beard here for Suzanne, we can do like that. And then I want to have the beard a bit longer. Then I can do that. Now that looks very creepy, but you can then further customize your beard. And maybe we want to have also eyebrows. Something like that. Now we have hair also in the eye, but you get the point. So I want to create a new blend file, and here we are on a new empty scene. You can enable the new system if you will go onto the edit preferences here on the left top, and then if you don't already have, you can go on the interface, and then you can click here on developer extras, because this is still in alpha stages and it is experimental, so expect some crashes and things like that and some changes in the future, but the system is already there and we will have a look at it today. So enable developers extras, and then here you will then see here a new button, experimental, and here you can search for the new curves type here, and I think this should be it. Then you can click on save preferences and close the window. And now if you would go on to Shift A, your add menu, you can see here we have now curves, and we have here an empty hair and a random hair. We can first look at the random hair, and here we have clunch of hairs, randomly, just something for you to play with. And then we can go here on the top on the sculpt mode, and here we can modify this hair however we want to. So we have here the comp brush, and maybe some names or some things here will change. As said, it's developers extra still, so it's experimental, but the comp brush at the moment, with that you can change the orientation of your hair, and sometimes it looks like it doesn't do much. That's because we have it set to sphere, and what sphere is that we would have an imaginary sphere here on your cursor, and it will remain on the position on where we will place it, so that you not control hair that's even further away. And project is that we would all that's in our circle here will be affected. So with that you can also manipulate hair that's behind your mesh. Everything that is from our view, that will be affected. So projected is everything that is in the way, and sphere is location based. So that's the difference. So with that we can change, so that's like an a normal hairbrush where you can change the orientation of your hairs. But first of all, let's go back to our hair types. So I go back to object mode and I will delete this, and let's add an empty hair. And the empty hair is just an hair object, but with no actual hair or called curves attached. So it has no information currently. But let me just add our monkey here. Let's rotate it. We have here our hair object. At the moment we can do nothing with it. It's just empty because it has no hair in. But here in the properties we have the object data properties. And here we can assign our surface. And we can use here our Suzanne monkey head. And now we can go into our scalp mode in the hair curves here. And first of all, lower the radius. And now we can work with this add hair brush. We can click on it. And now we can add hair on the surface of our monkey. Currently only with one single line, but that's because we have the add amount to 1. If I set it to 2, it will automatically distribute random hair. And now we can try to make the hair of the Suzanne head. So I will maybe do like that. We don't need much hair because it's still a little bit slow. And now this looks like that. Pretty simple, right? And another cool brush is the snake hook brush. And with this you can grab your hairs and just make funny things with it, like that. You saw it in the intro. I used that brush. Let me redo this. And then we have also the delete brush. So with this, you can delete all hairs. And here on the bottom, of course, the grow and shrink. Here, if you set it to plus, you will grow those hairs. I will set it to project, so it's all of those hairs. And you can also shrink them like this. It's up to you. So now we have our hairs attached to the monkey head. Let me go back to the object mode. And now we can use the bridge to geometry nodes. So we will be going into the geometry node editor. I will collapse this window and click on new. So now we can see they are already implemented into geometry nodes because you can create. And now we can basically work with these hairs because they are actually curves. We can work with them in the geometry nodes editor. So at first I will add, so with Shift A, I will go into the add menu where I can add new nodes. I have a tutorial series where I explain every single curve node here. You can watch that if you want. I will link it on the top right. And at first we will want to have a resample curve node to define the resolution of our curves. At the moment you can't see a difference because they are completely straight. But at second we want to have a set position node because we want to have a slightly wind effect or a slight animation. And for this we need to change the position of our points on those curves. So for this, we need the set position node to define a new position for those. And we can set the position with a noise texture here, and we can plug it into the offset. Now you can see it seems to work, but it's all offsetted. And this is because the noise texture has values from 0 to 1 randomly, and the average of this is 0.5, so it moves the whole thing 0.5 in the x, 0.5 in the y, and 0.5 in the z axis. So we need to grab a vector math node and we want to add -0.5. And now they are on their original position. So the next thing we want to do is we want to lower the scale of our noise texture, maybe like that. And I want to lower the detail so that it is not that extreme. And now we can see it seems to work, but something's weird here. Here we can, as said, we can define the resolution. And this is because we are moving every single point of each spline. So a spline is in this case one hair, and the whole thing is a curve. But one hair is one spline, so this is the difference. So we are moving the whole spline on the offset of the noise texture. And we don't want this. We want to have it moving at the top the most and on the bottom 0, because on the bottom it is and should be attached to the head. And how can we do this? We first of all need the information from those splines at the bottom 0 and then on the top 1. So this is basically the spline length, or the spline parameter as called here in the curve nodes. Here we have now the spline parameter, and this on the factor just outputs us, as said, 0 to 1 on the top of our splines. And we can use that to now define the strength of our noise texture based on the length of our individual splines. For this we will multiply our noise texture, and I plug the factor into the vector socket. And now we can see they are all attached to our head. And if we would move this, you can see now they work like expected. So I leave it like that. That scale seems to be just right. And now what this does basically is that the noise texture is on full strength on the top of our splines, and on the bottom it does like 0, because our spline should remain on its position on the bottom, and this is what this does. So now let us animate our noise texture. For this we will be using our vector socket because we want to move our noise texture through our hair so that it looks like wind. For this we will be using an input position on our vector. So this changes first of all nothing, and that's because our vector already uses the position information, but we just use it like that to give geometry nodes an information which we will now edit here in the middle. So we want to add on our position so that we can move our noise texture. For this we will duplicate this here, and now you can see we can move our noise texture on individual axes like this. And I will be using an combine XYZ node, so I can use an time node on an axis here so that I can animate an individual axis. For this I will be using in the input the scene time node, and this node just outputs us a time or the frame number we currently are, so just basically the time. I will be using the seconds because they're slightly slower. And now we can see this looks good. I think it's a little bit too fast, so we can just take a math node and just set it to divide by 2, but we can just also use the multiply 0.5. So some people told me that multiply by 0.5 is faster than dividing by 2, even though it should be exactly the same, but it's just the way that it is. So I will be multiplying by 0.5, but it's just dividing by 2. It's completely the same. So now we have our nice animation, but maybe I want to change the overall strength of our noise texture so that it's not that crazy. So for this I want to duplicate my multiply node and set it to scale. So scale is basically the same than the multiply, but all those sliders are combined to one float output, so that I don't have to change all those three values. I have one for everything. So now I can set it to 0.5, so now it's only the health. And I think I want to make this also a little bit slower, like this. So now it looks like we are underwater, and this is also nice, right? And now the next thing we did was we can instance on those splines, because as said, they are just curves, so we can also instance on them. So take an instance on points node, and this node just looks at our points on those splines or curves, and on each point we can then put an object or a mesh. For this I will be using a mesh primitive, a cone, and I will plug it into our instance. And we can see it's slightly too big, so I will lower our scale here. Another thing I did is I put the cones on my example where with the rotation they were following our curve. So if I'll make that a little bit better, a little bit bigger, you can see they are always pointing upwards, but I want them to follow the orientation of our splines or hairs. And for this I will be using the rotation here, and we can't set it manually because it will be affecting equally every single instance. We want to extract the rotation of our splines. For this we will be having a nice node here, which is the, where is it? So much nodes in curve tangent, right? So this node outputs us basically the information we need to rotate our instances to follow our hairs or curves. But just to plug this in here doesn't quite work. I mean, it looks good, but it's a little bit strange. And this is because we have to extract further information from this rotation. So we need the align Euler to vector node, because we want to basically align our cones on a single vector on our hairs or curves. So for this we will be plugging the curve tangent into the vector, and I'll set it to z. And now we can see they are following our curve. Isn't that nice? And it's basically pretty easy. So this is only for the animation, this is only the noise, and this is only the instance, and those is only the rotation. And now one thing I also did is that the cones were on the bottom bigger than on the top, and we already have this information. We have the spline parameter, which is on the bottom 0 and on the top 1, which is basically the length of our curve. And we can plug this into the scale, and now we can see it's too big again, and we can use a color ramp this time for that. And we can take our white, because this represents 1, and we can bump this down to 0.01. Now you can see they're basically getting bigger on the top, so we have to invert this, and this looks also interesting, but I want them to be a little bit bigger, maybe like this. And this looks great. So this is basically the whole effect. Just collapse our cone here, and you can also just go back to your sculpt mode and just manipulate your meshes. You can add more if you want to. I really like the beard here, So I'll make it again. Oh, and now you can see, oh, I forgot. Another thing I did is, you can see now here on the bottom, we have hairs that are very long. And here on the top, they are rather short. And I want to have the cones instance not equally 6 times spline. I want to have them instance at a certain length, so that they're always the same length from each other. So I will be using here 0.07 maybe. Yeah, looks great. Now I will go back to sculpt mode and I will be putting them down here. Achieve our nice beard. This looks crazy. So I hope you've learned something, and this feature will obviously get more attention, and there will be coming more brushes, more features, more interesting stuff, and we can be happy to live in those exciting times of Blender. So thank you for watching. If you didn't know, I have a material pack on Gumroad. If you want to have nice pre-made materials, you can check that out. There's also a free version, so the link is in the description. And thank you for watching. I hope you've understand everything, and try to be safe in those crazy times. And thank you for watching. See you next time.